McCloud, California is a small town with little over 1,000 residents in 1997. It's not just small in terms of population, it's geographically small as well, with no more than 30 roads in the main area. The town is situated near the southern base of Mount Shasta. Its original purpose was that of a logging community, but now it's primarily a home for federal forestry workers. The area around McCloud is well known for fishing, hiking, and other outdoor activities. If this description sounds familiar, it's because it's the same town that another person, Karen Merrow, disappeared from the same year. Anna Marie Zaccaglini was 15 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was a high school cheerleader, a budding musician, and had a potential career in modeling in her future. Given her age and ties to the small community, it's felt that she would not have any reason to give it up and leave on her own accord. On Wednesday, June 4th, 1997, Anna went to a school assembly where she played guitar as part of the program. Sometime after that, she went to the apartment of her boyfriend within the town limits. She was seen there by witnesses. According to her boyfriend, Anna then left the apartment to head home. Her journey took her close to a house where Karen Merrow was last seen, before she too was reported missing later that year. Anna did not arrive home, and subsequently was never seen again. The Henline family, the owners of the previously mentioned home that Karen was last seen at, were questioned by law enforcement concerning Hannah. Eventually, their residence was searched, but nothing definitive was ever found. There are many theories around what may have happened to Hannah, but her case remains unsolved. The FBI was involved in the investigation. There are no direct conclusions for Hannah in the book. Instead, the so-called case summary says that California is big, has a lot of missing people, and has large areas of mostly untouched land. Let's review the main points as discussed in the Missing 411 book. Anna, who was 15 years old, went missing on June 4th, 1997 from McCloud, California. She played guitar at a school assembly. She visited her boyfriend. She walked towards home but didn't make it. Her path took her near the Henline home. Nobody believes that she would have left voluntarily, and the case is still open. Please keep these points in mind. We will be addressing each of these and determine if they are accurate statements given the information we're able to dig up. The sources that I use will be cited in the description below. I encourage you to check them out and do your own research, and not take anything that I or anyone else say in face value. Before we begin the review in earnest, I want to note that every single case that I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request for that was investigated by the Siskiyou County Sheriff got blanketly denied due to the cases still being ongoing. Anna's family was not well off. They sometimes lost television, phone, and other services due to lack of money. At some points, their electricity was almost shut off. Even so, Hannah was happy at home, and some of Hannah's friends even moved into the house with her, her mother, and her two younger siblings. Hannah was well liked, and her parents say that she had a lot of good things going for her. She enjoyed the music of the Grateful Dead and the Doors. She was able to emulate her rock heroes. She was a bass guitarist in a band from school that was getting invited to play at various events. She reportedly had extensive martial arts training, which made her family think that it would be very difficult for her to get into a car or some other place where she didn't want to go. She also would have screamed, which, according to residents, would have easily been heard in this tiny town. she was a fighter. Despite her happiness at home, she did, as many teens do, prepare a getaway bag that contained some essentials that she could take with her at a moment's notice. Hannah also had many friends in the area. She was popular enough to be crowned sophomore homecoming princess at her high school, though she told her friend, Jo Henline, that this is just because the few other girls in her very small school had already refused it. Hannah started June 4th on a high note. She was the bass guitarist in the McCloud High School rock band. And she, along with her bandmates, were invited to play at the Speedway in Wairika. This was a big deal to her, and she was excited for it. At about 8:30 p.m., Hannah decided to go see her boyfriend, Danny Rice, at his family's apartment. Along the way, she stopped by an adult friend's house, Tony Lemos. There, she smoked a cigarette before continuing onward to see Danny. Ultimately, the visit ended in a breakup. It may not have been a particularly harsh breakup, though, since the reason for the relationship ending was one beyond either's control. Danny was moving to Nevada with his mother. All the same, she left the apartment, clearly upset, between about 10 and 10:15 p.m. With her, she took a few pictures that she had previously given to Danny. She didn't have to walk far to get home, but it was very dark at this hour. The last person to see Hannah was Ed Henline, a nearby neighbor, and a name you may recognize. According to Ed, he was drinking and partying the night that Hannah went missing. He saw her leave Danny's apartment and went over and walked with her for a while. He told the Record Searchlight reporters that the details are foggy though, and he can't really remember anything about where she went after their walk. Hannah was not reported missing on the day that she disappeared. Her mother waited until the next day, since she assumed that Hannah had just fallen asleep at Danny's apartment. When Hannah still did not return, later the next day, her mother checked the Rice apartment as well as a few other friends before filling out a report. Sheriff Byrd then had the gall to tell reporters that not reporting Hannah missing sooner was a mistake, as investigating missing people as quickly as possible is absolutely critical. I remind you that this is the sheriff of the same department who refused to take Karen's missing persons report for months. What a joke. Her parents make it clear that all of Hannah's things were still present in their home when she went missing. That is, all of her clothes, money, and valuables were accounted for. Even her getaway bag was left behind. Even so, the sheriff's office repeatedly stated that there was no evidence of foul play. They do occasionally acknowledge that there aren't any clear signs of her being a runaway, but the investigation seemed to stall out very rapidly. Perhaps this was due to the general lack of serious criminal activity in the area. Prior to Hannah, or Karen for that matter, going missing, the last murder was in 1984 and was the result of a fight. Perhaps the lack of investigation was another case of bias in the Siskiyou Sheriff's Office. If you recall, Karen was not investigated very well, to the point of telling Karen's parents not to file a report until months later. Karen's family posits this is because Karen had a troubled background. Similarly, Hannah's mother says that she believes that Hannah's case would have been taken more seriously if Hannah had been someone else's daughter. Again, this family struggled for money, and there were rumors that Hannah's mom was a drug dealer. She says, because of this, Hannah's case was not investigated as it should have been. The FBI did also lend a hand in Hannah's disappearance. They compiled a profile for Hannah, but ultimately it did not have an official opinion on what actually might have happened to her. Their assistance didn't really seem to amount to much. Throughout the first year that Hannah went missing, the Henline home was searched 4 times. The following year, a search warrant was served on the Henline home again. This was the first warrant to be issued concerning Hannah's case. One other thing that I want to note, but I don't think is worth placing into an actual point of the case, is that one of the 2 sheriff deputies that were in charge of investigating this case had a personal tie to the Henlines. One of the deputy's sons was a personal friend of Ed Henline Sr. The deputy stated that there was no conflict, but there were rumors that the reason why nothing was ever found in any of the searches was due to a leak in the department. This idea is corroborated by the fact that, according to the Record Searchlight, the only investigator that the Henlines would speak to at this time was that same deputy. Now, why do I think it's worth mentioning, but not something that really alters the overall perception of the case, is twofold. First, the size of this town is tiny. The fact that somebody knew someone else who was tangentially related is not surprising. Second, as the deputy states, he's not in control of who his adult son is friends with. I'll let you decide for yourself, though, if that changes how you regard this case. In 2012, 15 years after her disappearance, Ed Henline Sr. was arrested for suspicion of murdering Hannah. While he was held in county jail awaiting trial, Ed Jr. was supposed to be arrested as well, although he was out of the state at the time. Ultimately, however, Ed Jr. was never charged, and Ed Sr. was released after prosecutors dropped the charges in 2013. While in custody, Ed Henline Sr. maintained his innocence. Hannah's case is still unsolved. Let's look at Missing 411's conclusions and see if they're still valid given the information my research revealed. Hannah, who was 15 years old at the time, went missing on June 4th, 1997, from McCloud, California. She played bass guitar at a school assembly that morning. She visited her boyfriend in the evening, which ended in breakup. She left her now ex-boyfriend's house at around 10 p.m. Her path took her directly to Ed Henline Sr., who walked with her for a while but was too drunk to remember exactly what happened. Hannah was not reported missing that night because her mother thought that she was staying at the Rice family home. Nobody, except for perhaps police occasionally, thought that she left voluntarily, but simultaneously there were no other signs of foul play, and any major fight that took place would likely have been heard in such a small town, at least according to the residents. The case is still open, and while I'm grateful for having the opportunity to look into the case, it does not belong in Missing 411. I'd like to just take a moment to thank my patrons over at patreon.com for their support that makes videos like this possible. Thank you so much. Those of the public recognition tier are an anonymous user, you know who you are, thank you, and Nigel B. And of course, thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.